Along the North Sea coast, the classic image of soldiers in neat rows of tents vanishes. Here, the wind and salt air made tents useless. Instead, soldiers lived within the dunes themselves, carving out hidden shelters that blended into the landscape. The environment was harsh: biting wind, constant damp, and relentless cold. Tents couldn't withstand these extremes. The men had to adapt or fail. Visitors would see only rolling dunes and tough grass, but a closer look revealed smoke from hidden chimneys and camouflaged entrances. These weren't just shelters, they were burrows, fortifications and homes shaped by necessity and ingenuity. The soldiers learned to work with the land, not against it, using the dunes for protection. Their story is one of adaptation, where survival meant becoming part of the earth itself. The dunes, not tents, became their answer. Standard army tents were no match for the North Sea's fury. The wind tore at canvas, snapping ropes and ripping pegs from sandy soil. Soldiers spent hours fighting to keep their shelters standing, only to lose them to the next storm. Rain and sea mist soaked everything, turning tents into damp, mouldy traps. The cold was relentless. Canvas offered no insulation, and stoves were dangerous in such flimsy structures. Morale and health suffered as bedding stayed wet and uniforms never dried. The tent became a liability, draining energy and focus from the real mission. It was clear above-ground shelters wouldn't work here. The only solution was to abandon tents and look to the earth for protection. The answer was simple: dig in. By excavating into the dunes, soldiers neutralized the wind and gained insulation from the cold. The Earth's stable temperature kept shelters warmer in winter and cooler in summer. Reinforced with timber or scavenged materials, these dugouts stayed dry and secure. Camouflaged with turf and grass, they blended into the landscape and absorbed rainwater. Building these shelters was hard work, but the result was a warm, dry, and safe haven. Soldiers became true inhabitants of the land, not just temporary guests. The earth itself became their shield. Shelter design was all about working with nature. Curved roofs, like those of Nissen huts, deflected wind and reduced pressure on the structure. Excavated sand was piled against walls for insulation and camouflage. Entrances faced away from the wind, often with angled tunnels to block drafts. The shelters were planted with marram grass, binding the sand and perfecting camouflage. These choices made the shelters nearly invisible and incredibly stable. The result? A dwelling held in place by the dune's own ecosystem. Human ingenuity and nature working together. Inside, every detail fought damp and cold. Floors sloped to drain water into sump pits, and raised thresholds kept rain out. Timber linings and air gaps trapped warmth, while stoves were placed centrally for even heat. Flues were short and capped to keep out wind and rain. Bunk beds lined the walls, and storage was built in to save space. The result was compact but efficient, a warm, dry refuge from the elements. Every feature was about survival and comfort in a hostile world. These shelters were true homes beneath the dunes. The soldiers' shelters were a masterclass in adaptability and using what's at hand. They built with whatever materials were available, proving flexibility is key to survival. Their earth-sheltering techniques are still used in sustainable building today. Digging in, insulating with earth, and orienting entrances away from the wind remain vital lessons. These principles, working with nature, not against it, are timeless. Modern survivalists and builders can learn from these simple, effective solutions. The story of the abandoned tents is a blueprint for resilience. The wisdom of the dunes endures, offering guidance for anyone seeking shelter from the storm. If you found these lessons valuable, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Your support helps us bring more stories from history to life.